not the number of particles that I used in my simulation. Okay, I made a simulation with 20 particles, but I could have 22. Okay, now if I have 22, instead of having 2 times 10, so 5 times 10 to the minus 3, I have 6 times 10 to the minus 3 in infidelity. So it is quite flat, and it still stays the error in the order of 10 to the minus 3. And so there is stability with respect to that. And we managed, based on this, to convince a few people to try and do experiments. So here are some recent results that they obtained. And one is, the first one is very preliminary. This is an open loop experiment. We have not shown, this is not even yet fully analyzed the data. This is really almost raw data that I got from Emmanuel, was it 3 weeks ago, okay? So here is our pulse. Linear pulse is this one. The optimized pulse is this different shape. And what they get is, with their normal procedure, which is already very much optimized in the sense that, it is state-of-the-art. This is basically the best one can do worldwide. They get some density of defects. So you would like to have this curve here equal to 1. And so they get it significantly lower than that, up to 20%. And if you use the optimization, this is, again, the first very preliminary result, but we see that we can suppress those defects. So we can do definitely better, distinguishably better than they did after several years of tweaking, tuning, and doing the best they can. So this is suppressing defects in the mode transition. With open loop, like we deliver to them the pulse, this pulse here, and they did the experiment. It is the plug and pray approach. So here is another thing instead in closed loop, because I said you can take this algorithm, this method, and instead of a computer simulating the dynamics, you can put the system. You try a pulse, you measure, and then you iterate. So here is an experiment with Massimo and Guscio did with the same problem, so suppressing defects in a multi-insulator. And so they start here with some gas pulse. Here they have 2 parameters in the crab, and they move around, and you can see that they do converge after a certain time into this lower error region. Okay? And this again is something that we are writing it up actually. I just this morning I received a complaint from my assistant that I should read the paper so that we can submit it, but of course I couldn't because I am talking to you about that. So here is another open loop example. Now it is not, well, one may think, okay, this is just a feature that works with maybe some discrete, some array systems, something like that. So we applied CRAB to an entirely different context. Here is a problem which Schmidtmeyer is working on. So he has this BC, Bose-Einstein condensate, on an atom chip. It is an anharmonic potential. And now what he wants to do, it is in the ground state, he wants to excite it to some first excited state in this anharmonic trap, because then he can get out of this state, he can get pairs of atoms with correlated momentum via decay from this mode. And again, they tried to do this, they could do it on the order of, in a time on the order of 10 milliseconds, but this was long for them because they wanted to do other operations in that. So we did our optimization, and we get again with CRAB a certain patch shape. And the features here are prescribed because they told us what their waveform generator can do. And we gain 1 order of magnitude in time, still with very high transfer efficiency. Actually, what our quantum speed limit theory would tell, because this is in principle a simple system in the sense that you know the gap here. Quantum speed limit theory would tell you that it is half a millisecond. We are not quite there, probably because we have to take into account limitations that they have in their experimental system. So we are at about twice, slightly more than twice as long as the quantum speed limit. But the nice thing is that they can measure it, and they have this first excited state, which survives for a certain time and then it decays, and it should be. And even what they claim, I'm not sure I believe it, because this is again preliminary analysis of data, what they claim is that the fidelity they get is even higher than the one in our simulation. So I guess that, I would have still 5 minutes, but we can leave them for questions, or I can tell you about the other.
So you started 10 minutes.
I have 10 minutes. Oh, fantastic. So I can even give you the other transparency that I erased. In any case, here I wanted to make a consistent story, okay? And here is the take-home messages that I would like you to have. When you sit in your car, you need to park it, think of the dynamical algebra, your controllability theory will tell you whether something can happen. But then you want to know how fast it can happen, and for this you need maybe some quantum speed limit theory. And in the end, this would not be relevant if you would not be able to realize this. And for this you need some wiggles, and there comes wiggling around your quantum optimal control theory that tells you how to make such things happen. And if you want to do it with many body systems, then of course you have to use our Crab algorithm, which is the only existing, to my knowledge, only existing quantum optimal control algorithm for many body systems and quantum phase transitions. And that was the end of the story. So I thank you for your attention. Now we have two options. Either we have a little bit of what we get with this is that we are able to reduce dramatically the errors for such manipulation in such a way that if I didn't use this wiggle here, if I had only the modulation in time of this laser intensity according to this Gaussian, then I would have an error in the order of few percent, and I can go down by 6 orders of magnitude just by doing that. Why is this? Because the modulation here that I'm having, on one hand, it is a modulation that still gives me the logical phase, the entanglement. But on the other hand, the time scale of this is much quicker than my very soft and slow phonons. So basically, in this way, I am decoupling almost entirely from the phonons in this very complex system. And this is a piece of luck, if you would like. Okay, this is not non-generic, but it shows you somehow these wiggles can have a very clear explanation why it works. And they can even be resistant to noise, as I will show you in a minute. So I guess that yes, here comes the other type of noise. So this was a thermal situation in which my system could even be thermally excited and I wanted to perform my quantum control. Now I have the problem that I said before. I would like to trap an atom with my laser here, but the laser is jittery, so I'm exciting the atom. How would that work? Well, this is in this setup by Philippe Congier, where they can have some very well-defined geometry for trapping minima for your atoms. And here is where we consider the errors that they have. So here is this quantum gate that I showed before, where I am doing my Feshbach resonance gate with the manipulation that Philips had realized, and we wanted to do it in Philips' system. But he asked us to take into account the typical noises, so the position of these lasers would jitter more or less as much as my hand is jittering, in the sense of a few percent. And this would be very bad, because if you have a reduction in fidelity of a few percent, then you can no longer do this fault-tolerant quantum processing that I said yesterday. But then when we used the plug-and-pray approach here, we got, funny enough, we got a reduction in fidelity of only 10 to the minus 3. And whenever I talk to my optimal control gurus, Hershey is one of them, and there are many others to whom I go to get some word of wisdom, because I'm just applying these ideas, and sometimes I do not understand why it works. One thing they say is what I said yesterday: there are many paths in Hilbert space, and quantum mechanics is linear. So if you perturb it a little bit, somehow you are not going to have chaotic exponential divergence. Another aspect is really, this is based on interference. So if you take away one of the paths, one of the interfering paths, somehow this will be stable. And another aspect, again, is, after all, I am in a minimum. And as Hershey taught us since long time, and as we learned from experience, as I said yesterday, really, many of these problems have a relatively smooth landscape, in the sense that I am in a minimum for my figure of merit. So I'm in a minimum, it means if I move around, if I'm displacing myself, if I have some noise, in lowest order, I'm not changing my figure of merit, right? And this is what we saw here. But of course, this was just one first example. This was, I think, back in 2005, and so we wanted to understand a little better. Well, here is an explanation of why it could work qualitatively. So here is a system which is undergoing, this is the Titanic, it is undergoing some strong dynamics, but while this was happening, we know, you go to Wikipedia, there was the legendary Titanic band. So people were singing but happily, because they could hear some Mozart music, okay? And this required a certain level of control, self-control, but also there is a reason why this was possible. So here is a huge dynamics. So, maybe at this point Mozart was no longer there, but before there was huge energy being put into the system, and still you could hear Mozart. Why that? Because if you look in detail here, you will see some little wiggles. These people are learning systems. They have some control algorithm in them, such that you go and you look. Well, now Mozart was completely gone, but before it was possible to hear it. Why? Because even if you are sitting in a boat that rocks in the ocean for meters, you can play your violin, okay? Because this, the task you want to achieve is to induce some vibrations which come from some very little movements, and what is important is not the absolute height of your fingers, it is the relative height between your fingers and the violin. And of course, if I am sitting on a boat that is shaking at the same tempo, like a prestissimo, yeah, then it won't work. But if the Titanic is sinking, relatively fast, but still on a different time scale than this dynamics here, then you can still achieve your control task. And this is what we had previously in the Granger case, because actually the frequency of jitter for the laser was in the order of the milliseconds, and this was the total time scale of my gate. Whereas those little wiggles, which are the important part to get the acceleration, to get the control and the interference, are on a much shorter time scale than that. So everybody was telling us, now, okay, easy, that was an easy problem because you have frequency separation between your control and your nodes. So let's find a system in which this frequency separation does not exist. So we want to have a system taken from some very dirty solid state situation like superconducting qubits, where really you have noise that has similar time scale than your control. So since I'm not an expert, I'm utterly ignorant in superconducting systems, I took a postdoc, I put him in a cardboard box, I sealed the box, I shipped him to the seat of knowledge about superconducting qubits, at least in Europe. If it was in the US, they would have shipped him to Steve Gervin, but in Europe we shipped him to Gerd Schoen, which was good enough for this purpose. And then he trained him, he put him back in the cardboard box, and then he sent it back to me. And when I opened the box, there was my postdoc who was able to do really 1/f noise realistic simulation with the micro fluctuators in a system for simulating superconducting qubits that are coupled in a Josephson way. And so here comes a quantum gate that we want to perform on some of these coupled Cooper pair boxes. What happens is that basically we have again one red curve, which is some big wiggle and some small wiggle, which allows you to perform your gate in a quick way. And then we have the noise, really 1/f noise, very dirty. It takes some effort to simulate that, but you see that really it has the same time, it competes on the time scale of the control, in the sense that you have, this gives you some jumps even during the control, which really is, disturbing. So if you were playing violin with this, nice red curve, someone would come and they would take your hand away while you are playing some note, you would not hear anything anymore. So it's really the same time scale, it's really distorting significantly your control. And now we want to see what happens. I still have some time. We want to see what happens. Of course, what will happen? Well, until now this is trivial because, what is that? As a function of the amplitude of the noise, strength of my noise, I am plotting the error that I am having. And of course, if I have very strong, like 100% noise, then of course it won't make any difference if I do some optimization or not. It will be completely destroyed. And of course, we know, because we showed it before, that if the amplitude of the noise is very small, in the limit that it is 0, then there is actually a difference of a couple of orders of magnitude, more than 1 order of magnitude at least, between the non-optimized gate and the optimized gate. This is what we already know. And then of course there is some transient regime in between, and we know that Murphy's law is universal, so you expect the real value of this amplitude, which is given by nature or temperature or whatever you like, in an experiment. Murphy's law predicts this value will be here, where you do not distinguish the optimized from the non-optimized version. And here comes a surprise, because we have rules if we have exceptions, and in fact what happens is that a typical experimental value for that amplitude in the circuits that I was discussing lies around here. So in the regime in which, in the presence of noise, of real noise, of realistically simulated noise, tested everything, certified by Professor Gershon in Karlsruhe, you still get something here that takes you from a quantum gate that is worse than the fault tolerance threshold to something that is beyond the fault tolerance threshold with real noise. So there must be something here. This cannot be just a piece of luck or the Titanic's dynamics, as I showed before. So it must be that this stability that our optimal control gurus are teaching us is really there. And we can exploit it. And we can exploit it in a series of situations that I will show probably tomorrow. So here comes maybe the last example of what I promised, in the sense of even more distortions. No? So now until now I said, I can have my system that has some noise intrinsic, experimentally, physically in the system. Now comes something else, in the sense that I prescribe a certain pulse shape, a time dependence for my control, and then my waveform generator will not be able to give me what I wanted. For instance, it can make some errors. So here is an example of, for a transport. This is again my transport problem, yeah? Again my champagne, again my harmonic oscillator from here to there. I want to do it non-adiabatically. So I can achieve that by accelerating and decelerating. And here is a red curve that would be my preferred shape. But it can have some other distortions. For instance, I can have a waveform generator that only gives me a step function with a certain time resolution. Here, just for the sake of clarity, I am taking a very poor time resolution of my waveform generator. Okay, only a few steps. Or I could have some noisy things, some additional frequency components that of maybe unknown amplitude which come up here. Or I could even have a path that depends on this, but in a high nonlinear way. This is why we involve Navin Khaneja, one big expert of quantum control from the engineering point of view. So in a very nonlinear way, I can have an error which depends even on the derivative of this guy, in the sense that whenever I am having my system in a certain position, I can do it precisely. But when I move it, I may make mistakes while I'm moving it. Okay, so the mistake can be proportional to the velocity. And so I can have, instead of my red curve that I wanted, I can have a whole class of curves with unknown amplitude. Okay, to make me Phillips happy, I don't know really how big that is. Can I find a solution? This seems almost hopeless. Okay, can I find a solution such that nevertheless my transfer from beginning to end, ground to ground state still works? Of course, I wouldn't be showing this if this wouldn't be the case. And in fact, it is. So that red shape that I showed is a red shape that was optimized, taking into account all classes of possible distortions that I showed. And so in the beginning, I start at time equals 0 with my wave function on one end of my sort of transport range, and I want to end up in the end with ground state on the other end. And during the movement, so I'm telling the system, please follow the red curve, and the system does something else, which I don't know how far it is from that red curve, but if I chose the red curve in a clever way, then the system, during the transport, will do something, will spread around in a way that I cannot control, but in the end, it will refocus back to what I wanted. And here is a picture in phase space. So displacement and momentum. Here is the red trajectory that I wanted to follow, and my system can follow any of these other trajectories here, and still the fidelity will, during the transport, depend in a different way on the time, but at the end will converge back to 1. And this is again something that actually we didn't expect. We hoped maybe for some specific error models this would work. We found out it can be nevertheless very robust. And this is already going towards the next lecture, because it will, it will tell you we can exploit that robustness in order to do something quite non-trivial. So my last bullet point in my list of complaints was quantum noise. Real quantum noise in the sense that I have a reservoir which is coupled to my system in a quantum way, and even non-Markovian. Okay, so here we got a guy S coupled with via some phonons, some interaction couplings to a reservoir. What we want is really to control the system, to talk to it with some control fields, and for it to achieve some objective that we want to achieve, and we want to develop a control algorithm that can do that. And now I am putting up basically again this picture, because this is basically the same that I had before, but now the control algorithm needs to be something else. Okay? And in the early days when I started doing this with some simple unitary systems, my quantum control gurus used to tell me, oh, it will work also with a dissipative system. And of course I didn't believe it, maybe because my name is Thomas, and so this has also some biblical implication, as you know. But in the end, they were right, of course, right? So here is the algorithm that, oh, sorry, I want to specify the model before. Here is a harmonic oscillator that I have. I want to drive it only not shaking, but just parametric excitation, changing the frequency. And I have a bath with a spectral function which is non-trivial. Yeah? It can be ohmic, super ohmic, sub-ohmic, but it is no Markovian. Okay? And now I want to control this system. The bath has a certain temperature. My goal is the bath has a certain temperature. In the beginning, my harmonic oscillator is in a thermal equilibrium with the bath. And by my control, I want to cool my system to pump entropy out of the system into the reservoir. Okay, and to reach, to go towards the ground state. Can I do that? Well, I need to adapt my optimal control algorithm. So the objective functional, which before was simply a projection, right? As I showed in the first slide today, projection of what I want onto what I get in terms of states. Here is, of course, a functional which has to involve density matrices. So it is an expectation value, an average value of a trace of some operator that is what I want to achieve onto the density matrix that I achieve. Basically, what I do is I evolve my system in a proper way, including the non-Markovian dynamics, using a stochastic Liouville von Neumann approach. And what I do is essentially my pulse, my updated pulse, before it was called D, now it's called U, apologies for that, is the old pulse plus something that is essentially similar to before, gradient of my Hamiltonian as a function of my control. Here is the expectation value, of course, for density matrices, imaginary values before, and here on top I have average value over different realizations of my process. And so, of course, it is more complex to realize in terms of computation, but here comes the result. So I can even compare here a situation in which I would have a Markovian dynamics to non-Markovian dynamics. I think this was touched upon yesterday in the first lecture. Basically, what non-Markovian means, so yesterday it was focused on Markovian bath, I think. Non-Markovian means the bath does not lose instantly. It has some memory. It does not lose instantly all the information about the system, but it takes some time to decay and be wiped away. And here I can use a rotating wave approximation in my calculation, you know, neglecting the highly rotating terms that was also discussed yesterday morning. And this is equivalent basically to consider the bath as if it was Markovian. Or instead I can do the full non-Markovian analysis and get this blue curve here. You see a comparison between the case where I have no bath, no dissipation. Here is a short time Fourier transform, a windowed Fourier transform, the way it evolves in time. Okay, here is how it evolves in time, and here is the Fourier transform at a certain time slice. So in time it evolves in a very similar way if I have no dissipation and if I have a Markovian system. Instead, if I have this non-Markovian structure, I can exploit that in my control, in the sense that basically the system is losing some coherence, but this coherence is not lost instantly. So I can still talk to the system and let it interact with the bath in such a way that some of this coherence is retrieved. And the result is, in fact, that if I am having a Markovian system, the entropy in my system will only, in my oscillator, will only increase. Instead, if I'm using the non-Markovianity in the control, I can have the system interfere with itself and with the bath somehow at different times, and the entropy in my system goes down and gets pumped into the reservoir. And again, I know that this is no surprise for people who have, you know, deep knowledge of quantum optimal control, but it is still a non-trivial thing to achieve. And for me, seeing it in practice is something that makes me believe it much more than just, of course, believing in the fact that there should be, you know, a general reason for that. So I think that now it's the right time for me, for my last slide for today, which is a summary of what I think we learned, at least what I learned in doing all these things, and what I hope I have convinced you, partially at least, that it is the case. And the first statement is, well, that we are able, by using quantum optimal control, to enable high quality and fast quantum processes with AMO systems, but also with solid-state systems, as I showed before in one example. In fact, as I said, I mean, this can be applied to a very broad range of contexts. Tomorrow I will show 4 or 5 very recent experimental results that people have obtained, both in solid-state and in AMO, using our pulse shapes. And they have achieved things that they couldn't think would be possible a priori. And this is exactly the point. I mean, it works, these procedures work under experimentally realistic assumptions. You throw problems, dirt, complaints at your system, it still works. And, you know, lately we are starting to see that it really works also in real experiments. And so tomorrow I will discuss how one can take all of this and try to push it to the ultimate limits that quantum mechanics allows you in order to get the best performance from your quantum processes. And I guess that's it for today.